Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tony Donohoe, and I lead Walmart's US tech organization. During this session, we'll discuss social commerce and examine how it's transforming the retail market and the role it will play going forward in the industry. Social commerce is connecting our brands to younger consumers in the way they want to shop. And we're seeing a significant acceleration of its adoption over the past year, fueled by the pandemic e-commerce boom. A recent Bain & Company report found India's social commerce sector, in terms of gross merchandise value, was already at 2 billion in 2020 and will grow to approximately 20 billion by 2025. And that's US dollars. It's projected to reach 70 billion by 2030. Walmart is also exploring the social commerce space. We launched the first ever shoppable live stream in North America on TikTok, and just recently launched Pinterest shoppable recipes. We're shortening the distance from inspiration to purchase for our customers every day. So to discuss how social commerce is reshaping the retail industry, we have a panel of experts joining us. Kirti Varun leads the product management, analytics, design, and user research functions at the social commerce startup Meesho. We also have Sachin, Bhatia, the co-founder and CEO of Bulbul, India's first video commerce app. And finally, Kunal, Sinha, co-founder and CEO at GlowRoad, also joins us. GlowRoad is building a network of active resellers who sell products directly from manufacturers and wholesalers in their neighborhood and social networks. So welcome, guys, Kirti, Sachin, and Kunal. Hopefully I pronounced everything perfectly.
Thank you, Tony.
So, yes, sir.
Thanks, Tony.
Before we get started, I'd also like to announce something special for our audience. Please do tweet your key takeaways from the session with the hashtag #ConvergeWalmart. And there are some exciting prizes for some of your lucky tweets. So let's get started. Kirti, I'll go to you first. Tell us about the rise of social commerce in India and how the pandemic has impacted the space.
In the last decade or so, starting maybe in 2010, I think e-commerce started to gain traction, which means that consumers started buying things online and they saw the value of good prices, convenience of doorstep delivery, and also finding a lot of selection in one place, which physical retail could never solve. So that started to take traction. And as that traction built up, around 2013, 2014, even the mobile internet penetration in India started increasing a lot. So mobile phones became cheaper. Most importantly, the mobile data cost came down a lot with Jio, etc., coming in to the telecom space. And as that mobile internet population sort of skyrocketed, we saw a lot of social platforms gaining traction as well, along with e-commerce companies. So WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and so on. And social media platforms of this nature typically are very good at gaining distribution. So they can grow very fast and amass like hundreds of millions of users. And as the distribution started to take hold, one interesting thing started to happen, which is a lot of sellers started using these social media platforms to sell stuff to other people. While the core purpose of these platforms was social networking, but enterprising individual sellers in the country started using them for commerce. So that's where sort of the social commerce term actually originated, which is doing commerce by leveraging social media platforms. And as this trend started about 2014, 2015, a bunch of new innovations started. For example, Meesho is one of them, which is how do you solve the problems for these so-called resellers or social sellers by giving them a platform for them to do this kind of selling more effectively, right? And I think a bunch of other companies also started doing that. And that's how the social commerce trend started rising. And as this happened, I think one interesting insight also is that the kind of people who were involved in this social selling, all of them tended to be sort of in the low to mid income segment, people in tier 2 and beyond geographies in India. So people who were never involved a lot in the mainstream e-commerce, but this sort of became an alternate distribution channel for them. So that sort of powered the rise of social commerce. Most specifically, if you look at the last year and a half post the pandemic hit us, I think the online to offline shift, or offline to online shift, I should say, dramatically started increasing, right? Because you didn't have sort of physical retail at all. So a lot of penetration of online commerce happened, and what would have normally happened in maybe 4 or 5 years happened literally in 6 months.
Okay, thank you. I guess I find particularly fascinating here that you take mom and pop shops, you combine technology, you throw in a pandemic, and you basically, and in these tier 2 locations, you are bringing like a large portion of the world online so quickly, and it, to some degree, it's just amazing what can be achieved now. And the pandemic just brought all of this forward, and we're still only getting started. So that's pretty fascinating. So Sachin, over to you. Next question. What are the key differences between e-commerce and social commerce? And is there an advantage social commerce has over e-commerce? And if yes, what do you think they are?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and we kind of keep grappling with that, especially when we're talking to a bunch of investors. So I think at a very base level, e-commerce, or at least traditional e-commerce, the way we look at it is really digitization of catalogs, right? So and catalogs have been there in the US for the last more than 100 years. So you had Sears earlier, or you had the Tiffany's Black Book, etc. So I think what Craigslist and Amazon did essentially was to digitize a lot of these catalogs, right? I think social commerce is clearly a subset of e-commerce, but I think the key difference is that every seller is a buyer and a buyer is a seller, right? There's a very thin line, right? Sellers themselves are consumers of those products. The seller might buy one product, but she might help sell 100 products. And these sellers could be influencers. They could be resellers like Glowroad and Meesho does. They could be influencers like some of the people that that we work with. So I think that's like a key difference in our mind. Also, I think social commerce works very well in a trust deficit society, like India, and also society where people have, like Kirti mentioned, people have recently come online, right? These are people who've come online in the recent past, in the last 4 to 5 years. Ours is a very intent-driven purchase, right? You go to Amazon, you go to Flipkart, you search for something, you buy it and you get out. I think social commerce buyers are more in the discovery mode, right? They're still discovering products. They're overwhelmed by choice. In the US, you've had the likes of Walmart. People have grown up going to a Walmart, being exposed to thousands of products, right? In India, we moved from a corner store to a digital store in like a span of 4 or 5 years, right? So there is a genuine problem of choice. And I think that's what resellers and influencers kind of bring to the table, right? They bring that curation to the table and they bring trust to the table. And I think that, to our mind, is like the core difference between e-commerce and social commerce and shoppers generally. So shoppers who gravitate towards traditional e-commerce, which is really 50, 60 million Indians, right? Urban English-speaking Indians. But if you look at the 3.5, 4 million subscribers say that geo ads every month, these guys are still discovering products, right? These guys want that curation, they want that trust. Yeah.
Sachin, tell me a little bit more about the trust deficit and how you build trust more quickly, because again, you are online, you don't know the other person, and traditional shopping with a retailer is get in, go down the funnel, get out, as you said. But in social commerce, like building trust quickly, I imagine is key. And I'm sure you know a lot about this.
Yes, absolutely. See, I think so. Two versions of social commerce are out there in India. So one is, like I said, the reseller model. The reseller is ideally somebody somebody who's in your network. It could be a friend, it could be a colleague, it could be a relative, it could be a sister. So she does the curation for you. You go to Myntra, which is a fashion destination, online fashion destination in India. There are thousands of t-shirts there, right? One, you get overwhelmed as a consumer, and there's a genuine problem of choice. Now this influencer or reseller is curating 10 of those t-shirts and saying, hey, buy one of these because of these reasons, right? And the influencer does the same job. The influencer does the curation. She explains products to you, be it video, be it on WhatsApp, be it on Instagram, etc., and gives you a reason why. So you are following that influencer because you trust that influencer. There is something you like about that influencer. So that in itself builds a lot of trust. And then when she explains the product to you, she does an unboxing, she does a review, that in itself builds trust. And I think video adds that other layer of you get what you see. In a catalog on Amazon or on Flipkart, you see a product, you don't know how big it is, how does it look from all angles. You can show as many images as you want, but it still doesn't do the job. Video, pretty much, if I show you this phone, you know what it's going to look like. You know how big is it relative to your hand, etc. So I think video adds that layer of trust, and that's really how that trust deficit kind of gets bridged.
Makes complete sense. You're actually making me want to go and buy something from your site right now. So thank you, sir. Kunal, when it comes to social commerce, there is a big interaction between the end consumer and a brand or their brand of choice. How can an entity build a more powerful and immersive experience, or a brand build a more powerful, immersive experience?
With social commerce, I think the brand can really talk to the end customer in a very immersive way. Like Sachin was saying, be it a reseller or be it an influencer who sits in between the brand and the end customer. So this influencer or this reseller, as we call it, can bring out the best of the brand for the end customer. So let's say if this reseller or this influencer has been given some videos, as Sachin said, by the brand, she can show those videos to the end customer. This reseller or the influencer who has been trained by the brand can give the brochures to the end customer. They can talk about the nuances of certain features of the product to the end customer, which the end customer in a typical e-commerce setup would have had to find it himself or herself by reading through the description. Now there's a reseller telling them that these are the good features in this product. So for example, a product is certified for a cruelty-free product, for example. Now, what does that mean to an end customer? A reseller can tell it much better, because when I read a lot of description, it's just like a noise cancellation happening in my mind. I don't even bother about what I read. But if a reseller comes and shows me the video, tells me about the features, tells me about the certification of the products from a particular brand, it builds a better trust for the brand, and it builds a better immersive experience for the end customer for that particular brand. So I think social commerce is going to take the brands to the really next level of familiarity in the eyes of the end customer.
I guess the follow-up question here is, do you feel like brands in India are fully embracing social e-commerce, or are they still a little bit hesitant, or are they in the full-on phase at this point?
They don't have a choice, Tony. They don't have a choice. It means they already took a plunge into going online, let's say a few years ago with Amazon or with Flipkart. Okay. Now the brands are right there on Myntra. Now the next step is, can they reach closer, even closer to the customer? So they're already present. All these brands are present on Instagram. All these brands are present on Facebook. Now, if somebody tells them that, look, just being present is not good enough, why don't you let influencers sell you? Nobody minds extra business. So they don't have a choice. They would embrace social commerce.
Yes, of course. And I imagine every brand wants to diversify its source of traffic. And this seems like a very authentic way when the influencer or the reseller potentially is someone that the customer knows, that actually to some degree is a mirror of how social commerce would work in real life. So thank you for that. Sachin, back to you. Brands are turning to an increasing number of influencers to help with their sales. How can social commerce effectively use influencer marketing?
I honestly have a slightly different opinion here. I don't think we can, right? Unless it's like a brand campaign. See, influencer marketing is more about brand shoutouts, right? It's more about engagement. Social commerce is about driving sales, right? And that's really the difference between, say, an influencer management or an influencer marketing agency and, say, the kind of stuff that we do, right? Influencers, uh, uh, because of being actual users of the products themselves, actually help drive sales through platforms like us, right? A brand will typically use an influencer to just do a brand shout out and say, hey, this product is great. This is how I've used it. Their output metric from that engagement is more, it's engagement, right? They want retweets, they want reshares, they want likes, they want that engagement. I think what we strive is, and the kind of influencers we use are salespeople, right? And I'm sure it's very similar for Glowroad and Meesho. The kind of resellers they use are, it's in the name, right? They are resellers. They are selling products. They're not simply endorsing the product. They're saying, hey, I've used this product. I like this product. This is why you should go and buy it, right? And I think that's really how we kind of, look at this.
And do you think there's what are the incentives and I guess the tools that a typical influencer or a salesperson in this example typically need to get started? Like what encourages them to really embrace it besides the monetary aspect?
Ure. Yeah, so I think, it's a very new ecosystem in India. What we've tried to do is educate influencers, educate sellers that you can potentially make more money from commissions versus just doing a brand endorsement, right? So if you can earn $100 from a brand to do a brand shout out, you can actually earn $150 to $200 just on commissions, because the brand shout out is once, that video goes out once, that engagement ends there. But if there's a video of a product out there, it has a life of its own. We've seen videos which we did 8 months back are still driving sales. They're driving sales for us, and they're driving commissions for influencers, right? So I think that's really the key difference. And also from, I think, an audience perspective, it makes a lot of sense because, see, this is a very video first audience, right? People who've come online in the last 3-4 years in India is a very video first audience. The first piece of content that you and I probably consumed online was the written content, right? The first content these people, people who've come online in the recent past have consumed is video content. It could be a WhatsApp forward, which takes them to Facebook, it takes them to YouTube. They don't necessarily read product descriptions and product reviews. And I think that's what resellers and influencers kind of spoon feed that information by way of video, by way of a message, a short, crisp message. And that's what encourages the sale.
But two things I take away from that is when you think about it, the visually rich content, again, actually just mirrors what we would have done 100 years ago, 200 years ago. You're just interacting and there's no need for a text-based search. So it just makes a lot lot
It's like, I would say it's like Tupperware on steroids, right?
Yeah.
Tupperware sales on steroids in a way, right? So that's.
I was going to use the Tupperware example earlier, but I didn't know if it would translate. But yes, exactly that. And then there's a knock on the door from your neighbor selling something. You trust that person, and if they're going to speak for the brand, then you're bought in. I guess the other comment would be, again, amazing how this grows the economy, where the mom and pop and an individual anywhere in India can be part of the economy in a digital way. That's just it's amazing. That's fantastic. So Kirti, what role do you think tech can play in all of this, and how do you make things easier for the seller?
Sure. I think tech has a huge role to play. I think almost everything that enables this seller to sell and be successful is actually driven by tech. Like if you look at the core of this, right? So the relationship that a seller has with his or her customer, that's like a real world relationship, or in many ways, that's also a virtual world relationship, right? Because they're connected on social channels. So outside of that, everything else technology enables. And maybe the best way to think about this is what does a seller need to sell effectively to somebody, right? If you map out that journey, then you will realize that sort of technology plays a role almost everywhere. So for example, there has to be a set of items or a catalog of items that a seller would want to showcase to a customer. That's one thing. Then there is also the point around influencing them to buy something from that catalog. Like, how do you say which is better, which is not? What is good quality versus what is not? How do you compare prices, right? So all of that again is an area where technology plays a significant role. Then there is once a customer has decided to buy something, how does he or she pay for it, right? So payments is another area where technology comes in. Then there is also the entire supply chain part of it, because people want it to be delivered to where they are, right? So how does this seller organize logistics, right? So if you look at this entire chain, almost everywhere technology plays a key and disruptive role. And some parts of this journey are where I think these customers and this social commerce is probably very different from mainstream e-commerce. I think Sachin and Kunal have been talking about it, which is the catalog doesn't have to be sort of text driven or just image driven. It can be videos. It can also be live stream. Somebody is actually selling it live. Similarly, the payments again doesn't have to be always through debit, credit card, etc. Like it would be again in the top population of the country. Right now, it's WhatsApp payments, UPI-driven payments, right? And even the sort of supply chain side of it, there are lots of innovations possible. A lot of these customers may not require super fast delivery, right? They may be willing to sort of get more value even if something comes to them slower than expected. Okay. They may also be willing to pick up an item from somewhere close by as opposed to always expecting doorstep delivery. So if you just take a very broad view to what will it take to create value in this, then I think a lot of innovations are possible. I think we've seen only very few today, but we're still in very, very early stages. So in a nutshell, I think this entire chain of convincing the customer to buy and ensuring their need is fulfilled, I think it's almost entirely technology driven. Right, correct. And of course, I think what you're emphasizing here is there's the raw logistics supply chain that no one person can create, but at scale, you can leverage that. And again, back to the mom and pop can just, as long as they're now limited by the power of their imagination and their get up and go. And again, that just creates such leverage in society, and hopefully if used properly, done for good, right? And I think we have maybe time for one more question at this point. And I'll go back to you, Kunal. Much of the social commerce growth we've seen in the past year has been fueled by the pandemic, obviously bringing it forward. But as we come out of the pandemic, and hopefully we continue to come out of it at a great pace, what, if any, impact do you foresee this having on social commerce growth?
My view on this, Tony, is, pandemic has accelerated the process. Typically, it would have happened over a period of time, but it was just squeezed into 6 months. I think social commerce is here to stay. And even when there was pandemic, it was just that within the categories, there was a shift, I would say. While there was pandemic, there was sheer hopelessness and so much of devastation. Nobody was, for example, planning to buy a party suit. So fashion as a category, I would say, was down or very stagnant while this pandemic was playing out. Mm-hmm. And categories such as staples, grocery, fresh fruits, vegetables, oriented commerce was gaining traction because that was the thing which people needed on an everyday basis, and they didn't want to come out of their houses. So what I believe will happen as pandemic is fortunately going away, or at least people are getting vaccinated, is that maybe the grocery and fresh and those categories will take a slow down, and the fashion and other categories which people have kind of suppressed for a long time will start picking up from here is my view. But the growth and the social commerce penetration within India will continue with a much larger force, because now people are kind of, they have tasted the benefits of social commerce per se.
And do you think search trends and buying trends, like over time, will it change? For example, like buying groceries versus a TV. Sometimes we do that separately. Do you see now where someone in the suburbs of Gorgon is buying a TV and fruit at the same time, and the buying patterns long term changing?
It has changed. I think a lot of people who have started using digital buying, either through a direct e-commerce or even through a reseller commerce, social commerce, their behavior has changed. When you talk to people, I think even when the pandemic goes away, a lot of them would still prefer to buy a lot of things online. So be it TV, or be it a food, or be it an apparel or a garment for themselves.
Yeah, fair. Well said. So that's all we have time for today. I wanted to thank everyone for joining online, and in particular to Kirti, Sachin, and Kunal, our expert panelists. And also wish you every success in growing your companies. I really enjoyed the conversation. I guess for me, some of the conclusions I'm drawing from it is, well, it makes me want to get on a plane and go to India again. It's been too long since I've been there. It's always a fascinating country to visit. But as an industry, it feels like we're finding more and more ways to just replicate the real world experience online. Feels like we're one step closer to that metaverse that everyone is talking about these days, right? And then I guess shopping, retail is a reflection of life. It's meant to be an interactive social activity, rich with content, rich with interactions built on trust. And the last thing I would say there is that traditional retailers have focused on the funnel. Come in, do your text-based search, find your stuff, take it, go away. But that's not a true reflection of human life. And I think social commerce is really is pushing that forward. And that's a natural extension of what we do as human beings. That seems like a positive force. So thank you once again for joining. Thank you for everyone online, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you, Tony, for having us here.
Thanks, Kunal.
Thank you.
Kunal.
See you, Sachin.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sachin.
See you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Kunal.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.